Hello and welcome to Total Maine here on this September Sunday. We so appreciate you spending some time here. I'm Terry Stackhouse. Today we're speaking one-on-one with Senator Susan Collins. She plans to introduce a bill from the Capitol tomorrow in response to the Lewiston mass shootings. As we know, the process to remove the eventual gunman's weapons through Maine's yellow flag law, that process was never initiated. This bill would direct the military to use state-level crisis intervention programs. Collins telling us that investigative reports from the Lewiston Commission, as well as the Army Reserve and the Army Inspector General's report, all of those showed communication gaps between the military and law enforcement.
The purpose of this bill is to close that gaps by requiring our armed forces in certain prescribed circumstances to share with state, county, and local law enforcement information when a service member poses a serious threat to him or herself or to others, or has been involuntarily committed to a mental hospital. And I think that when you look at the facts of this case, that had there been better cooperation, communication, and coordination, that this horrific mass shooting might well have been prevented.
We know that this bill has been in the works for some time. I think that we first heard that you were drafting this bill back in December of last year. Tomorrow, once the text of this legislation is made available, what do you intend to share with your colleagues on the Hill to try to get this passed?
The way that we envision this working is that if a service member has made such serious, credible threats to him or herself or to others that the military decides to remove all of the military-issued weapons from the service member, that would be grounds for triggering the state's yellow flag or red flag law or other crisis intervention program that could result in a court ordering the removal of private firearms that are owned by the service member. The second instance would be if a service member is involuntarily committed to a hospital that treats people with mental illness. That too would be a triggering event that would cause the state crisis intervention law to be to go into effect, where a judge would make a decision on whether private weapons should be confiscated for a time while the service member is being treated. I want to emphasize that this bill is drafted in a way that it fully respects the Second Amendment rights of the service member. There is a judicial process. There are due process protections.
In terms of existing law, Senator, is what we have on the books right now enough in Maine? There are gun control advocates that have called for a red flag law. Ultimately, that has not been successful in getting through. But would that be helpful in terms of calling on the Army to utilize all of the resources that are at their disposal?
The yellow flag laws have the advantage of having very robust due process protections, and they require a medical evaluation that sometimes is not required under red flag laws. We're not trying in this bill to mandate what kinds of laws that states should have. We also are not creating a federal red flag law or a federal yellow flag law.
The Lewiston Commission's final report was more of a fact-finding mission. That's what the commission chair said during the press conference when they released their findings. Not much in the way of recommendations for policy. Does that make your job any more challenging, or is it easier when you are proposing a bill like this?
I had a very good discussion with the chairman of the commission, former Chief Justice of the Maine Judicial Supreme Court, Dan Wathen, and we went through the various findings. I think the commission did an excellent job, and that it points the way to our legislation.
And Senator Collins, have you been satisfied with the changes that the Army and the Army Reserve have already announced? For example, we heard from the then leader of the Army Reserve that they would no longer be closing psychological health cases based on unresponsiveness.
So far, I would say that the Army has been good about implementing the recommendations, but this is certainly something that I'm going to continue to watch very closely.
All right, Maine Senator Susan Collins, thank you so much for being with us today. The eyes of the nation on Tuesday night were on the city of Philadelphia for the first presidential debate between Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump. For some perspective and a preview of this week's In the Arena podcast, we're joined now by our expert panelists. Appreciate you being here. So the main question that you're asking this week of the podcast is who won. So,
yeah, I think Phil, it's most people have been saying that Kamala Harris did herself a lot of good, and Donald Trump may not have.
Right. Yeah. Clearly, this was a very big, influential moment for Kamala Harris. She came through. Not only did she demonstrate she has the gravitas, if you will, she demonstrated that she could put Donald Trump on the defensive, and he got off his message and never got back on it.
Ethan, what do you think?
I think Phil's right on about that. She was on her message and knocking him off his message all night. You really expected him to, constantly be talking about the fact that, she's part of the administration now and focusing on, why hasn't she fixed some of the things that she could have fixed, et cetera, even though she can't as the vice president. But he couldn't even give that message all night long because she was just throwing jab after jab. It was really, I think it was the prosecutor side of her that just understands how to get under a defense attorney. But at the same time, as Phil suggested, she really showed her own stature. She showed her own gravitas, that she is going to be strong enough to lead this country, smart enough to lead this country, have the vision and the values that are most closely reflected in the American people. So she did herself well, and she wants to debate again, and that would be fun if they do.
Now, Ethan, I would just interject as someone who has moderated a lot of debates and forums over the years. Great credit to David and Lindsay from ABC for trying to make them answer specific questions and doing some real-time fact-checking. However, Ethan, pretty much nobody, neither Harris nor Trump, answered any yes or no questions.
Well, I would push back a little bit on that, Pat. I feel like she was very clear on abortion. She would reinstate Roe v. Wade. She was very clear on immigration. She wants to pass the bill that the Senate negotiated that would have strengthened our border. She was very clear on what she's going to do in terms of small businesses. So she was pretty clear. Now, she didn't answer every one of them. There were a few moments where I would have liked her to show a little more empathy and understanding about what those Americans who are struggling in this economy have been going through, and how she could have done better, how the administration will do better under her leadership. But he certainly did not answer any questions. I mean, I can't think of one where he was clear in a black and white way, this is what I'm going to do if I become president.
Phil, it sounds like Ethan's still pining for Bill Clinton.
Yeah, no question. I think the contrast for me is that Trump was trying to say, yeah, let's go back to 4 years ago. Yeah, we should go back to lower mortgage rates, lower energy prices, lower food costs. Yeah, we should go back to that era. And she was trying to say, we're going forward. And ineffectively, Trump didn't get her to tell us, well, how are you going to do that? Because you're already in office. You've already had 3.5 years to do that. Where's the beef, so to speak? And I think that's what's going to come next. She did a great job presenting herself. She now has credibility. Now I think it's up to the journalists to say, all right, fill in the colors.
It seems like in this political climate, it's not necessarily a certainty that a debate is going to happen until the candidates are on the debate stage and the first series of questions are asked. The vice president already expressing some enthusiasm to get back on the debate stage. Fox News is offering to host it. Do we see a rematch?
Well, it says she felt pretty good about how it went, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if maybe Trump might like a do-over and try to be a little more focused.
Yeah, well, we've all been waiting for that.
Well, yeah.
I hope there's another one. I don't think that she's going to agree to have Fox News hosted, however, unless there are some very different moderators.
Got to go into the lion's den. You got to go into the lion's den.
Well, I think she should. Yeah. She could go on there and be willing to be interviewed, but I think you want a more neutral platform when you're having a debate.
Also on the podcast this week, you were playing Who is Correct, looking at some really hot button topics that we've been discussing recently. The yellow flag law, this has been under such intense scrutiny, especially since the independent commission investigating the Lewiston mass shooting came out with their report. Some very sharp pointed criticism of the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office and specifically Deputy Aaron Schofield, who failed to confront the eventual shooter during wellness checks just over a year ago now. What do you have to say about that issue?
Well, you're right. The governor was correct, and when she said there were failings by the Army Reserve officers and by the sheriff's office, but the gun rights people are also saying, Ethan, that they think the yellow flag law is not strong enough, and they should have had something more like a red flag law.
Yeah, look, was the governor correct to say that there was human failing in this? Yes, but there is always going to be human failing, and that's why the gun safety groups are correct. The yellow flag law simply doesn't work. It failed us because there were no alternative means. It's like it was a bottleneck. There was only one path to stop this guy from getting his guns, and if you had human failure, which we always have, 31 people are going to get shot. Having a red flag law would have allowed the family to go to the court, could have allowed a law enforcement to go directly to a court, a medical professional, people in the community who knew this guy was a danger could have gotten rid of his guns. So the gun safety groups are correct. The yellow flag law fundamentally failed Maine people.
Bill?
You know, it just seems to me that if you look back at where this started, it started with the Army Reserves. Then it went over to the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office. The yellow flag law was in place. It was not implemented, and this tragedy occurred. And I would just point out to the viewers that since this tragedy, almost a year has passed, and the yellow flag law has been used over 330 times since then without incidents.
Yeah, Governor Mills seems to think that strengthening the yellow flag law and increasing funding in some other areas is going to be the path to success. So we asked her during that press conference whether she would support a strengthened red flag law. House Speaker Rachel Talbot Ross wanted to see that get through last legislative session, didn't go anywhere. The governor said that really wasn't her focus at this point. All right, some interesting analysis from the three of you. Thank you so much for being
welcome.
here on this Sunday. New episodes of In the Arena, they drop every Thursday. You can listen to the latest one right now wherever you get your podcast or by visiting our website, WMTW.com.